Yeah, I think I'm audible to you. Oh, yeah, folks, everyone, good morning. Okay, let's start our demo session, session one, regarding Spring Boot and microservices. Okay. Hmm. Folks, let's continue our session. Okay, Spring Boot with microservices. Otherwise, we can say Spring Boot microservices, whatever it is. Yeah. Folks, now let's continue. Let's continue our session. So, coming to the course details first. Okay, I need to give some course details first. So, I'm going to be the trainer. Okay, I'm going to be the trainer. And okay, and coming to duration, it is around 3 months. Okay, it is around 3 months, and including Spring Boot with microservices combinedly, around it will take 3 months. And coming to actually session timing is from 7:30. Today we started a bit late. Okay, we'll try to start early. Okay, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Okay, this is our session timing. Okay, and when you come to the fee details, okay, it is 8K for live classes. Okay, and suppose you want live classes plus backup videos, it will be 10K. Okay, for live classes. Okay, backup videos with 1 year validity. Okay, 1 year validity. This is going to be the fee structure. Okay. So coming to this session, first session for today. As you know, in the first session, we should know about what are the prerequisites required for you guys to attend this session. Okay. The prerequisites to attend this session is the first point I'm going to explain. And then we are going to look at about, I'm just going to talk about the major topics that we are going to discuss with the Spring Boot, and also the major topics that I'm going to explain in the microservices part. Okay. So basically, what I'm trying to say is here, I'm not talking about the internal details of the topics, but at least you will get an awareness on in Spring Boot, these things I'm going to learn. Okay, in this session. Internally, each of those topics are having many subtopics. Okay, but I'm not going into the subtopics of it. I'm just going to talk about the major topics. Okay, so uh, first let us come to prerequisites. So to attend the Spring Boot, you don't require any Spring knowledge because we are also going to discuss about Initially, Spring core module, Spring annotations, all those things I'm going to explain. Okay, you don't worry on that. That's the first thing. But some awareness on web programming is required. Some awareness on web programming in the sense you need to have some knowledge on what is HTTP request, what is HTTP protocol, okay, and at least something about server, driver. So these kind of things required. Some SQL queries, database connections, okay. So knowledge on SQL queries is required. Okay, knowledge on what HTTP protocol and request response, and also you need to have some knowledge on driver and server. Okay, so this kind of knowledge is enough. Remaining thing I will take care. You don't worry on that. Okay, so we are now going to look at yeah. Now we are now going to look at about what are the major things that we are going to discuss in the Spring Boot. Actually, initially we are going to start with the Spring core module. So after explaining about the Spring core module, which is the basic module to learn the Spring. Okay. Uh, did did anyone have the knowledge on Spring core module? Can you guys give me a reply in the chat? Any Spring core module or Spring core annotations? Anybody have that knowledge? Okay, Shivam is good. What about all the remaining guys? Okay, Lakshmi said no. Good, no issues. What about remaining guys? I think remaining guys, you don't have any knowledge on the Spring core module. Am I right? Very good. Good, good, good. No. Mm, mhm. Sure, sure. See, okay, no problem, no problem. So we will plan our session like this. Now, I'm just going to talk about today. What are the things that we are going to discuss in the Spring Boot? Okay. Then next we are going to discuss about what we are going to learn in the microservices part. So all those things I'm going to explain in the session today. Okay. First, initially we are going to start our discussion with the frameworks. I'll talk about application development with the technologies, application development with the frameworks. Because Spring is one framework, so we should know about what is really a framework. So for that reason, first we are going to start our discussion with the framework. So first, okay, you can download the entire course related content from our Ashok IT portal, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what are the major topics that I'm going to explain. Okay, sure. Look at this. Okay, look at this. If you talk about Spring Boot, okay. So in this Spring Boot session, first I'm going to talk about frameworks. Okay. I'll talk about what are called invasive frameworks, what are called non-invasive frameworks. Really, what is framework first of all? So first I'm going to talk about frameworks. Probably today I'll give you some introduction about the framework. Okay. First we are going to look at about what are the frameworks. Once you got to know about frameworks, then we are going to understand about what is really Spring framework and what are its modules. Okay. I'm going to talk about what next the Spring framework and modules. Okay. So that there you are going to start your introduction to the Spring framework concept. You are newly going to enter into Spring, obviously. You should know about what. So what is this really Spring framework? What are the modules in the Spring framework? Okay, and what is the purpose of these modules? At least you should have an idea about the overall framework and its modules available and why it is given like a modularized framework. So we are going to understand many things in this. Okay, so that's the second part I'm going to tell you about what are the Spring framework and its modules. Okay, then we are going to look at about an important module called the Spring Core module. This is a base module to learn the entire Spring framework, Spring Boot, microservices. To learn anything, this is the base module. Which is the base module? Spring Core is a base module for learning any other module. If you want to learn anything in Spring, first of all, you must have the knowledge on what? Spring Core. So that's why first I'm going to talk about the Spring Core module. About Spring Core, in Spring Core only you are going to learn many things. Many things in the sense you are going to look at about what is a dependency, what is dependency management, dependency injections. Okay, so Spring container. Okay, you are going to learn all such kind of basics, everything that you are going to learn in the Spring Core module. Spring Core module is a very base module for all the entire Spring framework. Whenever anybody wants to learn Spring Boot or anybody wants to enter into microservices with Spring Boot, then first of all, you must have very good knowledge on Spring Core. The Spring Core basics are very, very important. Here you are going to learn about what is container, what is a dependency injection, what is setter injection, what is constructor injection, what is interface injection, what is Spring Bean, what is Java Bean, its life cycle. So you are going to learn many things about the Spring. Okay, all the basics that you guys are going to learn in the Spring Core module only. So this is going to be the very, very important module. So first we are going to discuss about the Spring Core module. Okay. And in the Spring Core module only, next I'm going to explain about a very important concept called as all with examples. We are going to discuss about something called as Spring Core annotations. These annotations will play very, 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 very important role to learn the Spring Boot and microservices, Spring Boot with microservices. Okay, Spring Core annotations is going to play very, very important role. Okay, Spring Core annotations is the heart of the entire Spring Boot and microservices that you are going to learn. Okay, if you know these annotations perfectly, then only you guys can able to understand the Spring. I mean, you can able to implement applications by using Spring Boot with microservices. That's why these core annotations are going to play a very, very, very important role. Okay, now first I'm going to talk about these things. I'm just talking about one by one in the Spring Boot what actually we are going to learn. Once you got the Spring Core annotations, there I'm going to talk about what are annotations, why annotations are given, why don't we write XML configurations, right? And why we need to use annotations, what is the use of annotation, can we create a custom annotations by ourselves or not? So lot many things are there about annotations. So I'm going to cover all those things as part of the Spring Core annotations concept. Okay. So once after getting Spring Core annotations, you guys are getting some good idea about how to develop a simple applications by using Spring framework. Okay, right? Simple applications, basic applications. Like we can call it as a simple kind of communicating between object to object, nothing but object to object communication as a relationship applications. So such kind of applications that you are going to develop, simple Spring Core applications, Spring applications you are going to develop with the Spring Core annotations. So from here, sorry, from here, we are going to enter into, once you got all this knowledge, then we'll discuss into Spring Boot. Introduction to Spring Boot. So there we are going to compare developing applications with directly Spring framework and also developing applications with the Spring Boot. Okay, directly you cannot learn Spring Boot. If at all you want to learn Spring Boot, first of all, you should have some idea about what Spring framework, because Spring Boot is not a new framework. Spring Boot is a new approach or a new way of developing the applications using Spring framework. It is another way of developing the applications using Spring framework only. So Spring Boot itself is not a framework. First of all, remember that, okay? What is a framework? Spring only. Spring is the framework, okay? Spring Boot is just only what? A way of developing applications easily. That's why it is called Spring Boot, okay? Spring Boot is a new model or a new way or a new approach of developing the applications using Spring framework. Okay, it is very popular in the industry. We'll understand about what are the benefits or the features of, what are the benefits or the features of the Spring Boot that you are going to discuss in the introduction to Spring Boot concept. Okay, so once you got to know about Spring Boot, then we are also going to discuss about a concept called as Spring Boot basics. How to develop applications using Spring Boot. Okay, so once you got some basic applications knowledge in Spring Boot, next I'm going to talk about a concept called as Spring Boot JDBC. Okay, so here you are going to learn how we can able to perform database operations using Spring Boot with JDBC technology. JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. So here you are going to learn about how our Java programs can connect with the database and how our Java programs can able to perform the database operations. All those things you are going to learn here in the Spring Boot JDBC. Okay, right? Good. So once you guys got about Spring Boot JDBC and how you can able to write the code for performing insert operations or update operations or delete operations in a new way. Okay, once after getting this knowledge in Spring Boot JDBC, you guys are going to next enter into a concept called as JPA. JPA stands for Java Persistence API. JPA stands for Java Persistence API. Here you are going to learn about Hibernate. Here you are going to learn about Hibernate. Okay, Spring Boot JPA is the next topic. I'm just writing only. As I said already, I'm talking about only the major topics names. Internally, if I talk about JPA, around only JPA is going to be around we are going to discuss for a 10 days or so out of 3 months of time. Okay, around for 10 days that we are going to discuss only on JPA. Here you are going to learn about what is ORM, Object Relational Mapping. Okay, what is ORM, what is Hibernate, how can we map the Java objects to database tables? Okay, how can we store the objects, how can we fetch the objects, how can we update the objects, how can we perform the transactions? Okay, could be the local transactions, distributed transactions. So many things that you are going to learn in the JPA. That's why I'm only writing about the major topic name. Okay, for the again internal details and everything, you download our complete Spring Boot with microservices brochure from our Ashok IT website. Okay, in the website you have the Ashok IT Spring Boot with microservices brochure. You can download that. I'm talking about only major topics names. Okay, now, right? Lot many things I'm going to cover that you are going to see from today and tomorrow. So we are now going to look at about everybody. Yeah, no problems. Yeah, see, once we got to know about JPA, like how our Java objects and we can link with the database tables, and we can provide relationships like one-to-many relationship or many-to-one relationship or one-to-one relationship. All these things you are going to learn in the topic called as what? Spring Boot JPA. JPA stands for Java Persistence API. I repeat once again, JPA stands for Java Persistence API. So here you are going to learn completely about Hibernate. You are going to learn about a concept called as ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. So you are going to learn completely about ORM in the Spring Boot JPA. This is the very, very important concept. Very, very important concept. Okay, right? So once you guys got the knowledge of Spring Boot JPA and transactions, everything, then we are going to talk about the very important concept called as Spring Boot MVC. MVC stands for Model View Controller. MVC stands for Model View Controller. From here, we are going to talk about web applications development. Developing the web applications using Spring with Spring Boot. That's called Model View Controller. MVC is one design pattern. MVC is one design pattern. So we are going to look at about Spring Boot MVC. It is a very important, very important concept that we are going to discuss is called what? Spring Boot MVC. Spring Boot MVC. And here you are going to learn many annotations. Lot of concepts are there in Spring Boot MVC. Okay, right? So here you are going to learn about what is MVC design pattern, what is controller, what are the annotations required to define the controllers. Okay, what is a service layer, what is repository layer. So how applications can be developed by using all the three layers. So you are going to implement JPA again in MVC. Nothing but we are going to use repository layer with JPA and with presentation layer and service layer with MVC. So of course you are going to learn all these things in further, but MVC module is a very important module. Okay, Spring Boot MVC. Good. Once you got about Spring Boot MVC, here I'm going to talk about everything like REST. No, sorry, HTTP protocol. It's get method, post method, put method, delete method, patch method. Okay. First of all, what are all these methods? Okay. Are you getting my point? Okay. So many things that we are going to discuss in the Spring Boot MVC module. MVC module is the most important module in the entire Spring Boot. MVC, if you know, then next we are going to discuss about very important concept called as creating the API layer by using Spring Boot REST. Okay, these are called RESTful web services. This is very REST stands for representational state transfer. REST stands for representational state transfer. Okay, MVC stands for Model View Controller. JPA stands for Java Persistence API. JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. Java Database Connectivity, Java Persistence API, Model View Controller, Representational State Transfer. Representational State Transfer, REST. This is called REST API we call. Spring Boot REST means Spring Boot REST API that we are going to discuss here. REST API is very important. Okay, right? So there are many things are there. We are going to discuss about all of them in the Spring Boot REST API. Okay, folks, everyone. Once you got to know about REST API, this is called developing the RESTful web services using Spring Boot. This is called API layer. This is very important. But if you want to learn Spring Boot REST, you should have good knowledge on Spring Boot MVC. That's why first we are going to discuss about what? Spring Boot MVC. After that, then I'm going to talk about what? Spring Boot REST API. Spring Boot REST API is the next topic that I'm going to explain. Everybody is clear with this? Spring Boot REST API. Once you got to know about the Spring Boot REST API, actually it will take more time because many annotations are there, many sub-concepts are there. Okay, lot of things are there in Spring Boot REST API. Okay, you are going to learn about XML data transfer, JSON data transfer. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JSON, XML, many things that you are going to learn in the REST API. It is going to be the very important concept in the entire Spring Boot. This is very important. Developing the REST API using Spring Boot is the most important. Okay, now right? But when developing the REST API to connect with the database and to perform the operations, we are going to use what? Either JPA or JDBC, which means all these concepts are interrelated concepts. That's why I'm following in this order. And once you got to know about all these things, next we are going to discuss about a concept called as Spring Boot Security. Okay. Spring Boot Security is telling about how to secure our MVC application or REST application. Okay, which means what? We don't want to allow everyone to access everything. Based on the role of the user, either he may be allowed or he may be denied. Okay, right? So that is what called providing security. We don't want to allow unauthorized persons to access our data. We want to provide the data only to the authorized people, not for unauthorized people. So how it can be possible? By using security. We can restrict the user. We can find whether he is admin or whether he is a manager. What is the role of this person whenever he is going to log in, right? For example, you log into your bank account. Can you able to see my account details? No, no. You can only see your account details, right? Your deposits, your last 5 transactions, or whatever it is, right? But you can't see my account details and my transactions, right? Okay. But suppose if a manager logs in, bank manager has authority to see the transactions of your account and my account also, right? Because he is a manager. Okay, you are a customer. I am also a customer. My role is a customer role, but that guy is a manager role. Manager can see everything, but customer can see only his data, but not other customer data. Am I right or not? How this is possible? By providing security. Okay, manager is a one role of user. Customer is another role of user. Based on that, that's called role-based security. We call it as. So basically, these are all you are going to learn in the Spring Boot security. Everybody, did you guys getting my point now? Spring Boot security. And related to security only, this is Spring Boot security. Next, we are going to discuss about another good way of implementing security called JWT. JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens. JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens. It is also a very, very important way of implementing security. Token based security, we call it as. It is called JWT. JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens. Okay, na? Right. This 11, 12, 13 concepts are all related to security only. OAuth 2. OAuth 2 means open authorization. Okay, open authorization. O for open, AUTH for authorization. Open authorization version 2, OAuth 2. So Spring Boot security, JWT, OAuth 2. These are all talking about what only? These are all going to talk about what? Security only. These are all going to talk about what? Security only. Very good. Once after security is completed, next I'm going to talk about something called as batch processing. Spring Boot batch. I'm going to talk about something called as what? Spring Boot batch. This is for what purpose? To perform the batch processing. To perform the batch processing, we are going to have a concept called a Spring Boot batch. Batch processing means I will explain. Okay. For example, you take a hospital. In hospital, there are many, if it is a very big hospital, there are many insurance claims are there, right? So what happens now? First, all those claims are going to be processed at a certain point of time, at evening 6 o'clock, for example. On that entire day, whatever insurance claims are proposed, all those claims are processed at evening 6 o'clock. This is called batch processing. Large amount of data will be processed at a particular point of time. That is called as batch processing. Okay. So Spring Boot batch is used for performing what type of processing? Batch processing. So we are going to look at about how batch processing will be taken care by using Spring Boot. Very good. I'm talking about only the topics names and just explaining somewhere this is for this purpose, this is for this purpose, like that. Okay. Next, we are going to understand about another concept called as Spring with Apache Kafka. This is for message based processing. This is for what processing? Message based processing. What is the meaning of message based processing? For example, you take e-commerce application like Amazon. At the same time, there are many customers are going to place the orders. Okay. First, what happens now? All these orders are going to be stored in one queue. Okay. Queue is a first in, first out, data structure. Okay. So all these are going to be stored, all these orders are going to be, whatever the orders are placed, all they are going to be placed in one queue. And from there, one by one order gets processed. Because at a time, sometimes million, now for example, sale started. I think yesterday before or day before, I don't know. Sale started 26 January, right? Sale started. Okay, right? So freedom sale or something like that. So then you tell me many millions of users are going to, our customers are going to place orders, right? So first all these orders are going to be stored as message queues and then they are getting processed. That is called Apache Kafka. Okay, Spring with Apache Kafka. That's called Spring Boot with Apache Kafka. Spring Boot with Apache Kafka. And also in Spring Boot, there are something called as, so I'm talking about only what is what about each topic. What is what about each topic. Okay. Then 16th point. See, only major topics, if I am writing only these many topics we are getting. Okay. The 16th topic that we are going to look at or we are going to discuss is about, there is a concept called as Spring Boot profiles. Okay. You will understand what is profiles later because currently you can't. Okay. Next, there is a concept called as actuators. Okay. Profiles and actuators. So I'm only writing about the major topics names. Minorly, then we are going to have many topics again. Don't worry on that. These are the major topics that you are going to learn in the Spring Boot. In the Spring Boot, you are going to learn all these major topics. Once all these topics are completed in Spring Boot, then next we are going to enter into microservices. Then next we are going to enter into microservices. Okay, next we are going to enter into microservices. Okay, everyone. Next, you are going to enter into microservices. Okay, maybe if I miss some topics, but definitely I'm going to cover, but these are the major topics. Almost everything I'll cover. It's not a problem for me. I'll definitely cover everything. Okay. So next we are going to discuss in microservices. First, initially, we are going to start with the concept called as what is monolithic applications. Okay, first we are going to understand about what is that monolithic applications. You are going to learn what is monolithic application means. One application, a huge application which is deployed as a single jar file. Okay, you are going to learn about that when I'm talking about it. Don't worry. Currently, I can't explain to you, which is called as what applications I'm talking about? Monolithic applications. Okay, monolithic applications is the first topic that I'm going to explain. Once after monolithic applications, next I will tell you about why we should go for microservices. Why microservices? Why microservices? Okay, means what are the benefits of working with the microservices? How to develop a microservice application? Again, you need Spring Boot only. So to develop a microservice, service is also an application. How can you develop this application with the Spring Boot? That's why first we are going to complete all the Spring Boot concepts. Then next we are going to enter into microservices. Okay, right? So first you are going to understand about a point called as why microservices. First you are going to understand about why microservices. We are going to look at about why microservices are. Okay. Once you got to know about why microservices are there, then we are going to take up a small project. The one project only we are going to discuss all the microservices concepts in the same project. Okay, in the same project. Okay, I'll take about that. Okay. Then we are going to create one mini project. We are going to create one mini project with microservices. Okay. Basic microservices. So then next we are going to enter into a concept called Spring Cloud. We are going to talk about what? Spring Cloud. Spring Cloud. So how to make our microservices as cloud native microservices? Means if my microservices are executing on the cloud environment like AWS or GCP or Azure. Okay. So how these services can get benefit with that cloud? That's called Spring Cloud features. We are going to start. Okay. I'm going to talk about concept called as what is Spring Cloud. Once you got to know Spring Cloud, then we are going to discuss about a concept called as Spring Cloud configuration. That is called centralized configuration. Centralized configurations for the microservices. And once you got to know what is centralized configurations with the microservices, next we are going to understand about microservices communication. There is a concept called as FAIN clients. There is a concept called as FAIN. This is for communication between service to service. That is called FAIN clients. So we are going to look at about how to communicate one microservice with the other microservice by using the concept called as FAIN clients. Okay, one service can talk to other service and how it can be possible. That is we are going to discuss with the concept of FAIN clients. Okay, and once you got to know about FAIN clients, then we are going to discuss about a concept called as service discovery with Eureka. Eureka is a one type of server. We are going to look at about service discovery with Eureka. It is like a best example I can tell you is like a Truecaller installed in your mobile. For example, Truecaller app is installed. I have registered with the Truecaller. I have installed app. Then when somebody is calling me, I can able to know that person name if Truecaller is there in my mobile. Is it a spam call or whether it is some service call, something like that. But Truecaller is not there in my mobile. If somebody is calling me, then I can't able to see whether it is a spam call or whether it is a service call or something like that. Are you able to follow me now, right? So Truecaller is required, right? So suppose my friend has changed his mobile number but not informed me. I have his old mobile number, but he is now calling me. If he is registered in the Truecaller, right? Then tell me whenever he is calling me, even though I don't have his number, new number, but I can see his name. Truecaller will show me the name also. Correct? That's what concept of what here? Service discovery. Service discovery with which concept? Eureka. Service discovery with Eureka. It is a very, very important concept. Important concept. So once you got about Eureka, then next we are going to discuss about gateway. We are going to talk about what? Gateway. Yes, we are going to look at about the concept called as gateway. So you'll understand about gateway because nowadays you are learning full stack development. In the full stack development, your front end is a Angular application or a React application. Back end is a Spring microservices application. So between these two people, one gateway is required in the middle. What is required in the middle now? One gateway required between what and what? Front end and back end. In the middle of these two, what is required? One gateway application or gateway server is required. That how to develop or implement that gateway that you are going to learn in the Spring Boot microservices topic. Okay, that's called gateway. This is called API gateway, another way. This is called what gateway? API gateway. API stands for application programming interface. That is called API gateway. Okay, that gateway is very important to provide the communication between the front end and back end APIs and front end. Between the front end and back end APIs, so there is a API gateway available. API gateway is going to provide the communication. So that's how to implement that API gateway is what you are going to learn in the microservices. Okay, right, good. So once you got to know about how to implement that API gateway, then there are many other concepts are there. We are next going to look at about, okay, what is resilience. Okay, resilience for resilience for Java. So what is the resilience that you are going to learn? Don't worry. Okay, resilience in the sense I can tell you sometimes what happens, first time when you are connecting with one application, it will not connect due to network issue or something. But maybe after a let's say for example 1-2 seconds gap, for example, if you once again try, next time our try may good result, may give us result, nothing but what, it's connected. So sometimes because of network issues, application may not be connected, but the next try if you give within 1-2 seconds after, then it may connect, right? So this kind of implementation can be done by using a concept called as the resilience purge. So these are all the different topics that currently that I just want to talk about. What is the purpose of each topic? Okay, right? So resilience purge is for actually that purpose. Okay, right? Then you are going to learn about an important concept called as Docker. Okay, Docker. So Kubernetes is called K8s, but I'm not talking about entire Kubernetes in this class, but somewhat like which is related to microservices, basics of Kubernetes, I'm going to explain. In shortcut, it's called K8s, Kubernetes. Okay, Kubernetes is K8s because between letter K and S, you can find 8 characters in between. Okay, KS. Between that, how many letters are there? U, B, E, R, N, E, T, E. Totally 8. That's why it is called in shortcut K8s. That's what Kubernetes. Okay, basics of Kubernetes you are going to learn. Okay, next you are going to discuss about how to deploy our microservices onto AWS. AWS deployment. Okay, and of course, at somewhere when we are talking about JPA only, or even when working with REST API, whatever it is, we are also going to look at about SQL based database and NoSQL based database. NoSQL database means like MongoDB. Okay, normally we'll connect with MySQL and also we'll connect with MongoDB. Don't worry about the databases. Both I'm going to explain. So AWS deployment. These are all the topics that we are going to learn in the microservices. Okay, in the microservices, and these are all the topics that we are going to learn in the Spring Boot. These are only the major topics names, right? These are all the only the major topics names. Okay, but internally each and every topic is having lot of many internal topics inside. So we are going to discuss about internally many things about it, so that you will get confidence. Okay, that I know this concept or this framework very well. Okay, that's why we are going to discuss more internal things. Here I have written only major topics. Maybe in the microservices, 1-2 points I may miss out. But don't worry, at the time of discussion, definitely I'm going to cover each and everything which is related to microservices. You don't worry on that. Okay, na? Right. Good, good. So this is the entire concept that you are going to learn in the Spring Boot and microservices topic. As I said already, but what are the prerequisite things? Yeah. Just a minute. That's it. Yeah. So folks, first of all, in our in our Spring Boot with microservices topic, at the time of discussion, there are many patterns are also going to come internally. Patterns, I mean, like singleton is one design pattern. Okay. Factory is a design pattern. Builder is a design pattern. So abstract factory design pattern. Like that, some patterns are also going to come template design pattern. So whatever the patterns are, just as part of our concept, whatever the patterns are implemented, I will at that time I will explain about what are really those patterns. I'm going to talk about that. Okay, you don't need to worry on such kind of things. Okay, am I clear with this all? Right? Good. Now we are also going to look at here. I can add before working with the AWS deployment and all these things. Actually, there are some topics in the middle. Let's say, for example, I'll talk about the 12th topic as like we have something called as uh, Prometheus and Grafana. Okay, so then I will talk about AWS deployment. Okay, you will understand about what is Prometheus and Grafana, but that's also a very important topic. These are all the topics I'm going to cover in the microservices part. These are all the topics I'm going to cover in the Spring Boot part. Okay, right? So these are all the things. What are the prerequisites that I told you? What are the prerequisites that you should know before you attend this session called Spring Boot? See, when I'm talking about Spring Core module, about frameworks, about Spring framework and modules and Spring Core module, it is just like core Java only. So you should have the knowledge of core Java, that is enough. But whenever I'm talking about a JDBC, you should have some knowledge on what? Database, how to connect with Java and database together, what is a driver class, URL, username, password. So they are called as connection properties. Okay, database connection properties. So you should know about those connection properties. Okay, and you should know about connection. You should know about statement. Okay, you should know how to execute the SQL queries from our Java program. So these things knowledge is required at the time of talking about JDBC. Otherwise, before topics, you don't require anything. Just core Java knowledge is enough. But from here onwards, you should have some knowledge on JDBC. You should have some knowledge on servlet. Okay, JSP knowledge is not mandatory. Some knowledge of JSP is required, but more knowledge on some good knowledge on handy knowledge on JDBC and some knowledge on servlet is enough. Okay, right? That's a prerequisite. SQL queries knowledge also is very important, which is very required. Okay, and also Spring Core, Core Java knowledge is also required. Okay, collections knowledge is required, and threads knowledge is not required. Exception handling knowledge is required. Threads is okay if you know, that's good, but collections knowledge is required. About array list you should know, about a map you should know, about array list object you should know. Okay, mostly we use array list, otherwise we use a set, otherwise we use hash map. So that's why these knowledge is required. Collections concept knowledge is required. Okay, right. These are all the prerequisite things required. Okay, right. So in this entire applications, once a Spring Boot topic is completed, after all the topics of Spring Boot is completed, based on all the topics, apart from whatever the class examples I am explaining, I will also give you one integrated application with all these topics. Means at least by covering majority of the topics, I will give one kind of capstone project. Capstone project means some basic project that you can able to implement it. So that you can try at the time of discussing our sessions. If I give one example, you can create another example. Example requirements I will give, but you should try to implement it. Okay, that's called capstone project. Similarly, the same thing will be applicable even for microservices also. Even for the microservices also. Okay, right? Okay. So I'm going to take one example, which is related to telecom application. For example, a mini project I'm going to talk on telecom application. Okay. And at the same time, I'm also going to give you another application, which is maybe related to something like a supermarket. Okay. Or maybe SIM activations. Okay. So such kind of application. So I will give you one example. Okay. So that example you need to parallelly develop. If I'm developing class application, parallelly along with the class application, similarly, other application also you need to start developing it so that two applications you can practice at the same time. Okay. One is my application we can do. Second, you are trying a new application like that. That will be a good one to learn this. These are all the topics that I'm going to cover in the Spring Boot, and I'm also going to cover in the microservices part. Okay. So these are the things I'm going to start with. Okay. So initially, in the today I can talk about it. It's not a matter. Initially, first we want to understand about a concept called what is really about frameworks. What are really frameworks? Okay. So applications development using frameworks is what actually we should know. I will tell you about that. Actually, how the initially application development started. Okay. How the initial application development started. That you know that every application is going to consist, okay, 3 layers. One is called presentation layer. Second one is called service layer, also called as business logic layer. Third one is called data access layer. If you take any real-time project, any small real-time project to any big real-time project, okay, I'm not talking about a desktop application. Even desktop application also contains all these layers, but any application you take, basically it is going to contain 3 layers: presentation layer, business logic layer, data access layer. We want to know about previously how they are developed with the frameworks, then which frameworks were started, next how Spring Framework came into the market. So that's how I'm going to talk about the introduction to the Spring Framework topic. Okay, right? Are you able to get my point now, right? So presentation layer, business logic layer, which is also called as a service layer. Next layer is called data access layer. Nowadays it is called as a repository layer. So every application is going to contain 3 layers. What are the 3 layers? Presentation layer, business logic layer, and data access layer. So we want to know about previously how these layers are developed, which technologies were used. Later, which frameworks started, like Struts framework, Hibernate framework, then Spring framework. Okay, so actually previously what happened? Previous in the sense, let's say if you go back to around 10 years back, okay, a student has to learn 3 frameworks. Of course, at that time we don't have Spring Boot and microservices. Only Spring framework is there. Struts framework is there. Spring framework is there. Hibernate framework is there. So which means what? A student has to learn these 3 frameworks to prepare the resume. In the resume, 3 frameworks required. But nowadays, there is no Struts framework. Hibernate is already inbuilt into Spring now, which means only 1 framework is enough to learn. Which framework? Spring framework. With the help of the Spring framework only, we can able to develop the entire backend application for the project. So the 1 framework which is going to be used for developing the entire backend application is Spring framework. So I want to tell you, like, initially which technologies were used, what frameworks were used. So these topics I'm going to talk, okay, from the tomorrow session onwards. Today, my intention is just only I want to tell you some introduction, like, see, these are all the topics that you guys are going to learn in the Spring Boot with microservices class within the duration of a 3 months of time. Okay, from 7:30 we will start, from 7:30 to 9. Our session will be from 7:30 to 9. Okay, now folks, online people. So do you have any queries to me? Okay, maybe if I miss some topics names, I will add them. So see, this is not final content, just spontaneously as of now, whatever that I would like to explain. So those topics names I have written here. Okay, maybe 2-3 additional topics will be included into the Spring Boot, and also some 2-3 topics will be included into the microservices. Okay, right? We are going to look at about all these things. Don't worry on that. Right. Yes, Sunila, you can.
Hi, Shekhar.
Yeah.
So, do you have any older classes?
Means
Means this is the first sessions that you are taking on Spring Boot, or you already taken some
no, I took
previously some
many sessions,
classes?
many sessions.
Okay. So among those, the latest one and the classes you are going to take now, is there any difference between the curriculum?
Curriculum, see, recently have completed the batch from evening, that is 8 p.m., 8 to 10 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. So that
Okay.
content and this content is same. That batch I completed around, I think, 2 weeks back.
Okay. Is there any major difference I'm going to see between that one and this one?
That
Because
one and this one, that one and this one, you don't
yeah.
find many things. I think in that I have not discussed about Spring Boot batch. That's the only thing.
Okay. Okay.
All is there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sekar.
That's all. Yeah.
I asked that question because I'm looking little bit of faster phase. So I thought I can go to those classes so that I
You
can move
can.
little bit fast.
Sure,
Okay.
you can.
Yeah, because I don't want to see more differences. That's why.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Okay.
Remaining all covered even in that also.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Sir, your evening batch is also coming.
No. It's completed. I'm saying that it's complete. 2 weeks back, I've completed the batch Spring Boot with microservices.
But there's no in the schedule or time evening batch will come.
No. Right now, no. Right now it is in the morning.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hello, good morning, sir. My name is Gopi.
Yeah.
Sir, you have Spring Boot and microservices parallelly with start with real-time project, no, sir? Java real-time project.
Yeah. No, that JRTP session is again different. Here also I'm going to talk about, but it is like a mini project. I mean, which means multiple tools I'm not going to cover in this. In the JRTP session of Ashok IT, you will find out many tools.
Okay,
right?
Sir.
Okay, but
There is
here
a
I'm going to
parallel
talk about Maven first. I mean, because Maven is a mandatory tool. So first I'm going to talk about Maven. And once Maven, then I'm going to start expounding the Spring Boot.
Okay. Is it a parallel session, sir? As it is possible?
Parallelly, no, because you should have some knowledge. Then later you can go with the JRTP. At least some Spring Boot knowledge. After getting that knowledge, then you can go for JRTP session also parallel.
There is a totally in 6 months, in 6 months or 3 months?
This is for 3 months. This Spring Boot microservices is for 3 months.
JRT is the parallelly, is it the
JRTP session that may take around 3 months, I think so. The parallel if you do.
Parallelly, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
good morning.
is possible completed all topic in 3 months? Or
Yeah.
it is very
We will
large?
complete. No, 3 months is enough. 3 months is enough.
Weekend
See,
also
because here, see, if I'm explaining about one thing, then I'm just going to give you the similar concept of other thing as a work to you, so that in that way we can able to complete it. It's not a problem.
Weekend also class? Weekend, Saturday,
Yeah,
Sunday?
Monday to Saturday. Classes will be from, except Sunday, Monday to Saturday.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Classes will be from Monday to. If required, then we'll see on Sunday, but as of now, it's not required. So at the very end of the sessions, if we are moving a bit slow or if some extra sessions required, then we'll plan for Sunday. Okay?
Sir, this portion is enough for 3-year experience in Java?
Yeah. More than sufficient.